So it's worth questioning what you're doing and why you're doing it and what's possible. What is the purpose of your life? Uh, a lot of people tend to make assumptions that aren't really working out that well for them. Assumptions about what life is about and who they are and all of that kind of thing. And it's not giving very good results. So people will assume that life is just suffering and that there's no other option. And depending on where you're at in this whole process, that might kind of seem shocking to you. Somebody would think that life is all just suffering. Or maybe you're somebody who actually believes that. It's really worth questioning, though. Just question all of the assumptions that you make. Because if you're not satisfied with your experience, what are you thinking is going to make the change in that? Or put another way, what's the purpose of being dissatisfied with your experience? What do you think is going to come from that? What good will come from that if you just keep being dissatisfied with your experience? And so if you're dissatisfied with your experience today and you don't make any fundamental changes, and then tomorrow you're dissatisfied with your experience and you still don't make any fundamental changes, and then the next day you're still dissatisfied with your experience and you still don't make any fundamental changes, then you're just going to keep repeating that until you get to the end of your life. And then you'll look back and you'll say, gee, I was just dissatisfied and I didn't make any fundamental changes. And now I'm still dissatisfied. And my life was for nothing. Because if you kind of tell the truth about it, that would be the case, right? If you're just dissatisfied and you didn't make any changes and you remain dissatisfied, what was the point? What was the purpose? Like you're going to get a certificate that says you made it through, congratulations. What would that do for you? Would that be actually any kind of real consolation? Like, I made it through. I don't think so. So my proposal to you is that in fact, in truth, your life can be beautiful, meaningful, fulfilling, purposeful, that you can actually have that experience that is actually available to you. And it is a choice. My message is all about that possibility, that you really can live that life, that is possible for you. In fact, I suggest that that is the purpose of your life. Otherwise, like I've said, I don't see what the point is. So if you're on board with that, if you accept that that's a possibility for you, then probably the next question is how, right? You say, okay, great. Sounds great. I would really like to live that life that's meaningful and beautiful and purposeful and all of those kinds of things. I'd like to experience all the joy and the happiness and the peace and the fulfillment and all that stuff. But how? So I'm glad you asked. So the how is all about you being present, learning, and making new choices. And that probably doesn't sound sexy and exciting, right? That sounds like, oh, that's kind of boring. But the amazing thing is that it actually works. So you can spend your whole life looking for the sexy, exciting stuff, thinking, I'm going to get the sexy, exciting thing that's going to do it for me. And you could just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. And again, you'll end up at the last day of your life and you'll have spent your whole life looking for the sexy, exciting stuff, but never actually have made the fundamental changes. I'm reminded of, and I don't know if John Lennon came up with this or if he borrowed this from somewhere else, but he used this line, life is what happens when you're busy making plans, right? And so a lot of the time we're busy making plans. We're thinking, oh, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get that sexy, exciting thing that's going to fix everything. Boy, isn't that going to be amazing. Look how that's going to be. I'm going to be so special once I've gotten that thing. But you're just busy making plans. And then day after day, you're busy making plans. And meanwhile, your life is passing you by and your life is just sort of the same old, because nothing fundamentally has changed. Whereas if you just simply apply yourself day by day with presence, with the attitude of learning, with the intention of learning, then your life can transform day by day. And bit by bit, you can experience more of that beauty and joy and fulfillment and happiness and peace. All of that can be more and more alive in your life when you choose it day by day. And there are many ways in which you can do this. So it's not just one thing. So if you reduce it to just one thing, then probably your life will be somewhat one-dimensional. And it's not that the one thing, so one thing can be really powerful. So one thing can take you very far, but still it will probably be fairly one-dimensional. So for example, there are lots of very powerful one things. Okay, so we could say like the law of attention is a really powerful one thing. So the law of attention is that whatever you put your attention on, that's where your energy goes, and that's what grows in your life. So this is sort of the fundamental law of creation. This is how you create your experience. So it's super powerful. You want to know about that. You want to actually put some attention on that every day so that that can grow in your life, right? If you use the power of attention on attention itself, then you start to realize that, oh, this is something I can utilize in my life. You start to gain knowledge on that, and then you can start to apply that so that you can work with that and get the benefits of that. So that's super important and powerful. But if that's all you do, then as important as that is, it's going to be somewhat one-dimensional. So then there are other things like forgiveness. Okay, so forgiveness, super important. Because if you don't forgive, then you're just holding on to all of the old stuff. So if you're holding on to a bunch of stuff, and by the way, it's the stuff that you don't want, right? Like the stuff that you need to forgive is the stuff that you don't want. So if you're holding on to it, then just think about what the implications of that are, right? So it's like basically like I've got a big sack and I just fill it with all the stuff that I don't want, and I just lug that around. And I'm like, oh, life is so hard. Life is so hard. And looking around, isn't life so hard, everybody? And they're all lugging their sacks. Yeah, life's really hard. So when you learn this lesson of forgiveness, it's like, oh, I can take this stuff out. I can let it go. I can dissolve it. I don't have to keep lugging this around forever and ever, weighing down my life. So super powerful, really, really important. And it can take you really far. But again, one-dimensional. So power of attention, power of forgiveness. What about acceptance? Acceptance, also super powerful. Why? Because think about it. If you're not accepting, if you're resisting your life, then what is the implication of that? You're creating friction. You're making things difficult. You're making life way more stressful than it needs to be when you refuse to accept. You also make it virtually impossible to change anything if you refuse to accept, right? If I spend all of my energy saying no, then based on the law of attention, right? Whatever I'm saying no to, that's where my energy is going. So I get more of that, right? You know, it's like this notion of what you resist persists. There's this, if you mix water and cornstarch or any kind of starch in the right ratio, you get this stuff that people call it oobleck. It's based on, there's this thing from a Dr. Seuss book, but it's called oobleck. And the nature of this stuff is that if you press it really slowly, then it resists very little and you can put your finger right through it. But if you push it really fast and hard, it firms up and it resists. So a lack of acceptance is like when you're pushing really hard on the oobleck, then you meet with all this resistance, and it's like a big no, and it becomes your whole life becomes this big substantial resistance, this big substantial thing that you don't want. Whereas when you practice acceptance, then all of the stuff dissolves, all of the resistance dissolves. Suddenly, all of this power, all this energy is liberated so that you can start to direct it to what you want instead of being caught up in what you don't want. So